This man has managed to piss off literally everyone in Formula One. Drivers hate him. Team principals want him gone. Even the FIA's own stewards are questioning his decisions. Mohammed Ben Sulam became FIA president, promising to clean up the sport. But instead, he's turned F1 into his personal playground of chaos and controversy. From banning jewelry and underwear to threatening drivers with prison time, from botched investigations to public feuds with Lewis Hamilton, this guy has single-handedly created more drama than Netflix could ever script. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some people are calling him the most dangerous man in motorsport. These are the reasons why Formula One absolutely despises Mohammed Ben, the man behind the chaos. Before we dive into his controversies, let's talk about who Mohammed Ben Sulam actually is, because his background makes his current behavior even more baffling. This guy was actually a legitimate rally driver back in the day. We're talking 14 Middle East Rally Championship titles between 1986 and 2002. He even competed in some WRC events, including Rally Finland and Rally Australia. Here's the kicker. Ben Sulam was known as a pretty cool, laid-back competitor during his driving days. Fellow drivers described him as approachable and fair. So, what happened? Power. Apparently, it changes people in ways nobody expected. Fun fact, he's the first non-European FIA president in the organization's 118-year history. You'd think that would make him more sensitive to diversity issues, but as we'll see, that's definitely not the case. The jewelry police incident. Let's start with the moment everyone realized this guy was different. 2022 Miami Grand Prix weekend. While drivers are preparing for one of the biggest races on the calendar, Ben Sulam decides the real issue isn't safety or competition. It's Lewis Hamilton's nose piercing. The FIA suddenly starts enforcing a rule that had been ignored for decades. No jewelry while racing. But here's where it gets petty. They didn't just send a quiet memo. They made it a public spectacle, specifically targeting Hamilton, who'd been wearing jewelry his entire career without incident. What makes this even more ridiculous is the timing. The Miami GP was F1's big push into the American market, a glamorous, celebrity-filled event designed to showcase the sport's cool factor. And Ben chose that moment to turn F1 into a strict boarding school. Hamilton's response was legendary. He showed up to the press conference wearing every piece of jewelry he owned, basically telling the FIA to come and take it. The internet exploded. Fans were furious. Even other drivers started mocking the rule. Pierre Gasly joked about getting his ears pierced just to spite the FIA. But the president doubled down. He threatened Hamilton with race bans over a nose ring. In a sport where drivers risk their lives at 200 mph, this man was worried about accessories. The optics were terrible. The timing was worse. And it set the tone for everything that followed. Here's the really crazy part. The jewelry rule exists because of legitimate safety concerns about metal conducting heat or getting caught in safety equipment. But instead of having a mature conversation about modern safety standards, he turned it into a power play that made the FIA look petty and out of touch. The underwear controversy. Just when you thought the jewelry thing was peak pettiness, Ben Sulam said, "Hold my coffee," and went after drivers' underwear. Yes, you heard that right. Underwear. The FIA started mandating specific flamer-resistant undergarments, which sounds reasonable until you realize they were threatening penalties for non-compliance without giving teams proper notice or approved supplier lists. Drivers were literally asking, "What underwear am I allowed to wear?" in press conferences. The backstory here is even weirder. Apparently, Ben Sulam was personally reviewing driver safety equipment compliance reports and noticed that underwear standards weren't being consistently enforced. Instead of working with teams to gradually implement proper standards, he decided to make it an immediate compliance issue. Sebastian Vettel, never want to back down from authority, started making jokes about FIA underwear inspections. Will they check before or after the race? He asked reporters with a straight face. The whole thing became a meme. But behind the laughs was a serious question. Why was the FIA president micromanaging drivers' clothing instead of focusing on actual racing issues? This wasn't about safety, it was about control, and everyone could see it. The fact that a former rally driver who understood the practical realities of motorsport was getting bogged down in underwear regulations showed just how disconnected he'd become from the sport he once competed in. The swearing crackdown. Here's where Ben Sulam really showed how far he is from F1 culture. In late 2023, he decided that driver swearing on team radio was somehow damaging the sport's image in Formula One, a sport built on passion, adrenaline, and split-second life or death decisions. The irony here is incredible. During his rally days, he was known for some pretty colorful language when things went wrong. Rally drivers are notorious for their creative vocabulary when dealing with mechanical failures or navigation errors. But apparently that was different. His solution? Threaten drivers with penalties for using inappropriate language during races. Because when you're wheel to heel at 180 miles per hour and someone nearly takes you out, you're supposed to say, "Oh dear, that was rather inconsiderate." The breaking point came when he suggested that F1 should be more like other family-friendly sports. This from a man whose own sport, rallying, is famous for co-drivers screaming instructions that would make sailors blush. The hypocrisy was staggering. Max Verstappen's reaction was perfect. If you don't like it, don't listen. The fans agreed. F1 isn't golf. It's raw, emotional, and real. Trying to sanitize that passion was like trying to make fire cold. It defeats the entire point. But Ben Sulam kept pushing, even suggesting they could edit out swearing from broadcasts. The man fundamentally misunderstood what makes F1 compelling. Some of the most iconic F1 moments involve drivers losing their cool on radio. From Kimi Räikkönen's "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing" to Sebastian Vettel's frustrated outbursts. "Okay, Kimi, next guy behind you is Alonso. I'll keep you updated on the pace. Just leave me alone, I know." These moments humanize the drivers and make fans feel connected to the sport. The Las Vegas investigation disaster. Nothing exposed Ben Sulam's incompetence quite like the Las Vegas drain cover incident. During practice, Carlos Sainz hit a loose drain cover at high speed, destroying his Ferrari and nearly causing a massive accident. Here's the thing. Ben Sulam had been personally involved in approving the Las Vegas street circuit. As FIA president, he'd signed off on the safety inspections and track preparations. When his own oversight failed catastrophically, his response was to deflect blame rather than take responsibility. Any competent leader would have immediately launched a thorough investigation, taken responsibility, and implemented changes. Instead, Ben Sulam's FIA fumbled the response so badly it became a case study in how not to handle a crisis. First, they delayed the session without clear communication. Then, they gave conflicting statements about what happened. The investigation was slow, incomplete, and raised more questions than answers. Teams were furious, drivers felt unsafe, and fans watched the sport's governing body look completely out of its depth. The worst part, Ben Sulam seemed more concerned with defending the FIA's reputation than actually fixing the problems that nearly killed a driver. This from a man who'd crashed plenty of times himself during his rally career and should have understood the terror of a high-speed mechanical failure. The incident also revealed another problem: Benham's tendency to micromanage everything except the things that actually matter. He'll spend hours debating jewelry policies, but doesn't ensure proper oversight of critical safety infrastructure. The Hamilton feud. If you want to understand why people think Ben Sulam is bad for F1, look at his ongoing conflict with Lewis Hamilton. It started with the jewelry thing, but it's escalated into something much more personal and damaging. Here's where Benham's background makes this even more puzzling. As a Middle Eastern driver who competed internationally, he faced his own challenges with acceptance and respect in European motorsport circles. You'd think that would make him more sympathetic to Hamilton's experiences as F1's only black driver. Instead, the opposite happened. When Hamilton spoke out about diversity and inclusion in F1, Ben's response wasn't to engage constructively. It was to essentially tell him to shut up and drive. When Hamilton criticized FIA decisions, Ben took it personally instead of professionally. The breaking point came when Hamilton questioned the FIA's handling of various controversies. Instead of addressing the concerns, Ben made it about Hamilton not respecting the FIA. He turned legitimate criticism into a personal vendetta. Just take a look at how other former drivers have reacted. Many retired F1 drivers have publicly supported Hamilton's right to speak out, noting that drivers have always been vocal about sport governance. But Ben Sulam, despite being a former competitor himself, seems to have forgotten what it's like to be on the other side of FIA decisions. This isn't how a sports leader should behave. You don't pick fights with your biggest stars. You don't make everything about your ego. But that's exactly what Bonhomme has done, and it's made if one look petty and unprofessional. The steward confusion. One of Bonhomme's biggest promises was consistency in stewarding decisions. Instead, he's created more confusion than ever. Penalties that would be given at one race are ignored at the next. Similar incidents get wildly different punishments. The problem isn't just inconsistency, it's that he keeps interfering in decisions that should be left to race stewards. He's created an atmosphere where stewards are second-guessing themselves, wondering if their decisions will be overruled or criticized by the president. To make things even more frustrating, Ben Sulam actually served as a rally steward himself in the early 2000s. He knows what it's like to make split-second decisions under pressure. He understands the importance of steward independence, yet he systematically undermined the very system he once participated in. Drivers have started openly questioning penalty decisions, not because they're sore losers, but because the rules seem to change depending on who's involved and what mood the FIA is in. That's not governance, that's chaos. The stewards themselves are reportedly frustrated. Several experienced stewards have quietly stepped back from F1 duties, citing the toxic atmosphere and constant second-guessing from FIA leadership. When you're losing experienced officials, you're losing institutional knowledge that takes decades to build. The media war. Ben Sulam has managed to turn the F1 media, traditionally supportive of the sport, into critics. His approach to press relations has been confrontational, defensive, and often counterproductive. This is particularly strange given his background. During his rally career, Ben Sulam was actually quite media-savvy. He understood that motorsport needs media coverage to survive and thrive. He gave good interviews and maintained positive relationships with journalists covering Middle Eastern motorsport. But as FIA president, he's done a complete 180. Instead of working with journalists to promote F1, he's treated them as enemies. He's restricted access, given evasive answers, and created an atmosphere of hostility that serves no one. The result? More negative coverage, more criticism, and less trust between the FIA and the people who cover the sport. It's a masterclass in how to damage your own organization's reputation. The team principle rebellion. Perhaps the most damning evidence of Bonhomme's failures is how team principals, usually diplomatic and public, have started openly criticizing him. These are people who normally keep their complaints private to maintain relationships. They know they have to work with these people long-term. When they're willing to burn bridges by speaking out, you know the situation is truly dire. Christian Hurd, Toto Wolff, Fred Vasseur, they've all made public statements questioning FIA decisions and leadership. When you've lost the confidence of the people who actually run the teams, you've lost the sport. The breaking point came when multiple team principals essentially said they had no confidence in the FIA's ability to govern the sport fairly and consistently. That's not normal criticism. That's a crisis of leadership. Ben Sulam talks constantly about safety, but his actions tell a different story. The Las Vegas drain cover incident wasn't an isolated failure. It's part of a pattern of reactive rather than proactive safety management. He's more concerned with drivers' jewelry than with track safety. He focuses on underwear regulations while ignoring fundamental safety infrastructure issues. It's backwards priorities that put politics over protection. Real safety leadership means anticipating problems, not just reacting to them after someone gets hurt. Ben Sulam has consistently failed this test, which is particularly disappointing given his racing background and personal understanding of the risks involved. The biggest problem with Ben Sulam isn't any single controversy. It's that he's destroyed the FIA's credibility. When the sport's governing body makes decisions, people should trust that they're fair, consistent, and in the sport's best interests. Instead, every FIA announcement is met with skepticism. Every penalty decision is questioned. Every rule change is seen through the lens of politics rather than sport. That's not governance. That's the breakdown of institutional trust. Here's what's really scary. Ben Sulam isn't just damaging F1 now, he's potentially damaging its future. New fans see the chaos and wonder if this sport is worth following. Sponsors see the instability and question their investments. The man who was supposed to bring stability and professionalism to F1 has instead brought drama and dysfunction. And the longer he stays in power, the more damage he does to a sport that was thriving before he arrived. Mohammed Ben promised to make Formula One better. Instead, he's made it a laughingstock. From jewelry police to underwear inspections, from driver feuds to steward chaos, he's turned the FIA into F1's biggest problem. The sport deserves better leadership. The drivers deserve better governance, and the fans deserve better than this ongoing circus. If you think F1 needs new leadership at the top, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more unfiltered F1 truth that the sport desperately needs to hear.